Good evening, councillors. Welcome to the Finance and Strategy and Management Committee meeting on this day, the 7th of June. Welcome, officers. Nice to see you at your first meeting. First meeting in front of the table. Yeah, lovely, great, welcome. Okay, so let's go on to the first item of the agenda, which is the election chair. So elect the chair of the committee for the 2023 municipal year. Do we have any proposals, please? Yes, that's seconded. Thank you, Councillor Plant. Any other nominations? Okay, I see none. Congratulations, Councillor. Oh, all those. You've got a nice big hand up. All right, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Let's
Michelle, you're not straight out the door now.
I know.
You might be right. You fancy the south side?
No, not tonight.
Thank you, members of the committee, for voting me in and proposing secondly. And welcome to Liz in our first meeting. It's nice to have you. Item number 2, election of vice chair. Do you have any nominations for Councillor Gosha?
I'd like to propose Councillor Rob Romans, please.
Any second for that? Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any other nominations? All those in favour? Okay. Good. Congratulations, Rob. Thank you for giving them 2 again.
My pleasure.
Produce for absence, do we have them?
Thank you.
Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Plant.
I don't believe it affects my voting, but the lease at 357 is my direct area of competition profession. I know them all well. I don't believe it affects my vote, but I thought I should say it.
Do you want to declare that as a personal or a pecuniary interest?
I don't know, it's like 50-50. It's both. Yes. I'm both directly in the competition or competing industry with, but I thought I should mention it anyway, rather than sit on my hands and say, I know them both as friends, and they also compete in the same financial sector as I work.
It does affect your career, so
yeah, I don't believe it affects my voting, as I'm supporting of, but I thought I should say it because it is.
If it's a pecuniary interest, then you'd have to leave the meeting and not vote or speak.
I will take any recommendation on such.
I would doubt that it would meet the threshold for pecuniary interest. I doubt that it would be direct.
Yeah, I believe I can vote objectively on it, but I thought I should say it rather than sit my hands.
Okay.
That's quite right.
It is in the end your choice.
Yeah.
Item number 5, public participation. Do we have any public participation? Looks like we don't. Item number 6, minutes. To approve the minutes of the committee meeting held on the 19th of April. I know what you're going to say.
They're all over the place. I mean, one of the items seems to be missing completely.
Oh, yeah, I don't think there's a missing item.
I couldn't find working groups. I was looking in the pages.
They are there.
5 to 6 is reserves, but it's supposed to be minutes. They were a bit all over.
The numbering is right, but the documents are all there.
Okay.
Oh, I couldn't find where it
So,
was.
so the minutes are on page 9. 9 and 10. So I have a proposal that Councillor Arnold seconded that. All in favour of the minutes? Thank you. Item number 7, working groups. They are definitely here.
Page 11.
The content is there, it's just a bit.
I think the order is more or less right. I think that the reserve policy got inserted in the wrong place. I think so. So first of all, the 353, 357 working group. I have got the so the members last year were Councillor Arlott, Councillor Hooper, the Mayor, Councillor Hamilton, and myself. Do all those want to continue? Does anyone want to drop out, or would anyone like to be added in?
Can I join that one? Only if it's not necessary, but it's one that's of interest to me.
Yeah, no, I'm happy with that, yeah. Is everyone else happy to continue? In which case, to propose that those six are appointed. That's fine. Got a second for that? Yeah. All's in favour? Okay, thank you. And that will mean that we need to amend that. There's at least four, so we're okay with that. So next we have.
So you left off Councillor Clark, who was also on.
Oh, I did, yes. Apologies, yes. Yes, I will, assuming Councillor Clark wants to continue.
He wants to continue.
Yeah, in that case,
That's fine.
I'm going to retrospectively add him in.
Yeah.
Can we all do that?
Yeah.
The Value for Money Working Group was Councillor Arlett, Councillor Hillier, Councillor Plant, and myself, I think. Have I got those right?
Councillor Hinton as well.
Oh, Councillor Hinton, yes, I think she was on it. Yeah.
I'm quite happy to be added to that group.
So that'll make
6.
3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, okay. So I'm happy to propose that those 6 are the Councillor Arlett, Councillor Hillier, Councillor Plant, Councillor Hinton, myself, and Councillor Hamilton.
Would you be happy to amend the terms of reference? At the moment, it says it shall consist of 5.
Yeah. So we can do those 2 together so that we amend the terms of reference to replace 5 with 6, and then we appoint those 6.
Or number 4.
It's a bit more motion. I think that's going to be contentious.
Yeah.
So can I second it for that? So that's your right. Okay. All in favour of those 6 people and amending the terms of reference. Thank you.
Can I add to the terms of reference that we could, if those councillors that wish to have paper copies, that should be in the terms of reference.
We need to get rid of
we ensure that we get paper copies.
We need to get rid of paper copies.
You may, let's speak. It's the case that we haven't been getting paper copies in the past, all right? And I would like to get a paper copy, and I think it should go in the terms of reference, so therefore it's within the working groups.
I think I'm going to argue against that, not in principle, just in the specifics. I think if councillors want to request, individual councillors who are members of committees, subcommittees, wish to have paper copies, they should inform the town clerk, and we shouldn't as a matter of course.
Okay, fine.
I think it should be. So it's just a matter of, I'll check with the town clerk. Okay.
Since we're sat on finance, we should look at the cost of paper copies and then reevaluate whether we're still doing paper copies. Like this is beyond.
We'll see a debate.
There will be a debate.
You've got a paper copy
I
in front of you.
think that there ought to be an appreciation that people work differently, and some find it very much easier, as I do myself, to read a hard copy, to make notes on it as I go along, as I know Councillor Arlett does, as opposed to doing it, looking at it on screen. And so I don't know, it might be a generational thing, but I think that each to their own. I don't knock you for not wanting paper copies, but I don't expect to be not given a paper copy.
And I think that was what I was trying to suggest, that council should be able to make up their own mind. But I do think that we should encourage where councillors to use their online electronic copies rather than printing things out, where perhaps they're happy with the way, in order to try and meet our objectives as having declared a climate emergency.
Yeah.
Councillor Gavin.
It sounds like an absolutely perfect item for value for money.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I mean the sundial was great for the time.
I mean, it could be a 25-minute debate, get the costs out. Everybody should be aware of that, but I'm agreeing with Councillor Hillier that in fact, if councils want to, I certainly value a spreadsheet where I go down with a pen. So sometimes electronic, sometimes.
I will point out that 5-minute arguments rarely last as short as 5 minutes.
Well, not if I'm on the committee.
Yeah, I take it.
Councillor Gavshak's expression of brief.
And yeah, we all know who we might nominate as the worst offender in that space. Okay. Finance to receive the National Papers Management Account, full expenditure and summary of payments. They start on page. On page
13.
One thing I would like to point out, I can find it, is that the budget for 21-22 is a deficit of 200,000 and well, just over 200,000 pounds, and the forecast for 21-22 is a deficit of 117,000, which means that we're doing 83,000 pounds better than we budgeted, which is mostly a good thing because it means that we're bringing our spending under control after quite a few years of a significant deficits. But it also represents reductions in expenditure. Don't necessarily represent a good thing always, because it can represent the fact that we've reduced our services. But I don't think we have. I think these have been achieved by cost savings and increasing our income. So, for example, the adventure golf is an obvious case in point where we're looking at a significant increase in income from what we might have done. And I'd like to congratulate thank the officers for their work in bearing down the costs. This is an excellent result. Are there any other comments or queries on those?
117 is better than last year, but it still needs, budgets don't need to be spent, and a balanced budget is 0.
Yeah, that's right, and my ambition is to move closer, if not on, to a balanced budget for the next year. We should start drawing up the budget in not very long. It's going to start in September. Okay, can I propose that amendment seconded by Councillor Gaveshan? All's in favour of that? Okay, thank you. Expenditure, to consider the following items of expenditure. So firstly, the 353-357 Reading Road expenditure. I'd like to, with the permission of the committee, ask the Deputy Town Clerk, who's the administrator for this project, to come and join on the table and explain if any, or answer any questions on the need for this and where this £50,000 come from. Anyone's wondering.
No, have this one. Have this one.
What comes now?
Take your pick. It's only because Lauren's scared. Fine, I won't take offence. It's got arms, actually.
Under question. So I think the background as set out in this report sets out why we've got to this position. It has previously reported due to the project going through the neighbourhood plan process and the suggestion that we up the allocation to 50 dwellings in the neighbourhood plan. It was suggested that we apply for government funding, and we've been successful in obtaining £50,000 worth of funding from locality, which is the government's neighbourhood planning support programme. We had a very tight timescale because they weren't sure how long the funding would last, whether it was actually just going to end at the end of March. So it was advised early in March that we should apply for it. And we had to give about a 3-week turnaround time for the tender returns. But we were successful in obtaining, I think, 17 tenders in response. 7 of those were then reviewed at a meeting of the working group, and 3 of those practices were then selected for interview. And you can see the scores from the interviews on page 38 of your agendas.
It was a whitewash. Company B smashed it.
Company B were really positive. They're a local company which obviously stood in good stead with some excellent experience, and that has been supported by the references that we obtained from the Amersham and Chalfont Hockey Club and Queen Anne's School, where they've had 2 recent projects. So the recommendation is that we appoint Company B to carry out our architecture services and also to coordinate the supporting reports that are needed. So this will allow us either to apply for a neighbourhood development order or possibly outline planning permission for the site at Reading.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? Would like to make a proposal? Councillor Earl, you're the,
Yeah, I
chair.
propose we go with the recommendation, Chairman. Yeah, I was at the interviews, and I think as Kat said, when everybody was there, we all went away and put our figures in individually, and when we arrived, we were all kind of all singing from the same hymn sheet, and I think that's come out with the figures above. I think we've hopefully we're going to employ a good partnership with architect, and as a class of project manager or Neil
No,
Bobbington?
he's a planning consultant.
Okay, sorry.
It's two companies that have joined
Yeah,
together. to
yeah,
do a joint
yeah.
bid, yeah.
So Neil Bobbington does one thing, and the architect is Rianne.
You're not supposed to be
Yeah, should be
Which is
company
company B.
Oh,
company B.
Oh, company.
There goes the prejudicial part.
there goes the process.
Company B's now ruled
There goes the
out.
process.
It's okay, no one's listening.
I think we're going to have to restart the process there.
Just backtracking on what I was saying.
The
The two people that turned up locally, I think we were all very impressed with them. Their knowledge of clubhouses for a start is going to hold us in good stead. They have knowledge of good relationships with Sporting, which is going to be handy if we're going to get any money out of them. And I just think, working together, I think we're going to do very well, and we'll get this thing up and running, which Kath will touch on later. So I propose, and I think a big thanks should go to Kath, because like this is 50 grand. That if we hadn't had our E's and eyes and ears wide open, we would never have known that money was available. And as you said, the bidding within a short term of time, and obviously within the money, I think is exceptional. And I think these are the kind of things I'd like to see officers do in the future. Bringing something to the party.
Because they don't already.
Well, dare I say, just hoping back to last year, Liz, the other Liz, managed to bring us in about 45 grand from SODC on rates. And there again, if we hadn't known it was there, we wouldn't have bid for the money and we wouldn't have got it. So I think this is a good example of officers bringing in money to the council. I think it's exceptional, actually. So yes, I'd so move company B, and I don't know who they are.
Don't second for that proposal. We've got several hands going up. I think Councillor Plant was first. But,
I've just got a question, actually.
okay, go ahead.
Years ago on the council, we used to have the ABC thing, but when it had been voted on which one we were going for, then we'd reveal the name. The town clerk always used to say, well, this is so-so. So I just wondered why they're not doing that now, and why it's frowned on if the name is said.
Well, we haven't voted.
I suppose because we haven't voted it, but we will
It's
then.
probably
the
not
name
once
on-
we've voted.
Yeah.
Councillor Arnott's being a bit innovative and creative.
I'll just put a couple of names there. They may not.
So we have a second. The only question I've got, which possibly we can't answer, so we've confidential, is that we've got a grant of 50,000. Will anything be left over from that as a result of making this appointment, and how might we use it? But I'll keep. Maybe we can't answer that at this point.
I can answer that. There are various supporting reports that may or may not be needed to accompany any planning application or neighbourhood development order. And at this stage, until there's been some dialogue with SODC, we don't actually know what they are. So I think it's unlikely there will be money over, but there should be enough money to get what the council would like to out of it.
On the proposal itself, I think it's a very good one. One of the problems we've had with this over the years was the lack of clarity and a clear design of the sport replacement or upgraded sports facilities, and I think this is putting the horse before the cart. We're doing things a more sensible way around now, and I'm more optimistic than I was that this can proceed, this proposal. Right, I think Councillor Hammond, you were next.
Yeah, I'm obviously pleased that the money's come from the locality fund. Thank the government for supplying it. We've got to ensure that this money is spent very wisely, and if it's spent on a planning application, that's fine. That's obviously a good use of money. But what we then got to do is to work out, get these clubs to share a facility, and they both have leases. So is there a danger that we spend what is good government money on a good project are on a good process with the very relevant reports. Yet the hockey and the football club still dig their feet in and say they're not prepared to share.
This has nothing to do with what's in front of us.
Yeah, but what we're saying is, how should we not be checking with those clubs first that they are on board?
No, because that's the issue.
Well, hold on. Let's just, there's 2 more items on the agenda where I think you will be able to raise this point.
Okay, fine.
But at this point, we're looking at the step of appointing an architect.
So let's appoint an architect,
Yeah.
but I'm pleased to see the money coming from locality fund.
Are there any other questions or comments? Okay. Do you have any more to say, Councillor, or shall we go?
No,
Right, all's in favour of the proposal as on the agenda? Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, I'd just like to echo Councillor's comments about welcoming the FT staff in helping us to find money to fund important projects in town. Let's save us money and improves the budget, as I pointed out a few minutes ago.
Just shows, Chair, if we're going to just say very, very quickly, I think you'll be brief. It just shows that we should really thank and value our officers.
Yeah.
So that's really, really important.
It is.
There's always been a rule within this council that officers are not criticised. And I hope that will continue in the future. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Okay, item number 10, reserves policy. So I noticed you had joined this joint. Does either of you or both of you like to comment on this report, which is quite dense in the sense of being a lot of information there. So thank you for.
Is that dense in a complimentary?
Not
dense.
Entirely
as in
complimentary.
thick.
Just your name. I thought it was would you like to make any comments, or do you think the report speaks for itself?
I think the only thing I can say is the policy is basically the same as last year going forward. So there's no change from previously.
Yes. So we have to both review our policy each year, but also review the reserves as well, because we do have significant reserves, and we have to show that that we do need them in order to operate the council in a safe and sustainable manner. But we also mustn't make it generate excessive reserves. And the report I think makes clear that we have comfortable reserves, but not excessive reserves, and therefore the recommendation is, as on page 8 of the agenda, that the levels of the level of reserves are fine, and that the reserves policy should be approved unchanged as it was for the previous year. So I'm going to propose the recommendations that are on page 8 from the chair. Thank you, sir. Any other comments or thoughts?
Our reserves are large, but we've always got a projection of where we're spending. That's fine. It's the same as a few years ago. They just wanted greater clarification of our intended plans for the future.
Yeah.
It does allow us to keep the budget that's left.
It does, and it's worth bearing in mind, we are one of the biggest town councils in the country. We have, and there's a number of uncertainties about the way we operate because of the size and the extent of the operations and the services that we provide to the community, which is a very good thing. But it does mean that we need to be careful that if something like a pandemic comes along, we are protected as we were from the financial costs that those sort of unexpected events can generate. So we have a proposal. Let's go to the vote. All those in favour? Okay. Item number 11, risk assessment. This is your baby, I think.
And it is actually on page 47.
We finally matched up the two. Would you like to comment on particularly any updates that you've made since last year?
Certainly, I mean, the risk assessment is based on last year's, which is shown by at the top of page 50, where it says strategic risk assessment May 2021. That should be May 2022. Indeed, just to see,
Just to test we've read our papers, yeah.
But broadly speaking, it's the same as last year, but with actions updated. Nothing much really to point out. Most of the things have already come through this committee anyway, so you'll be aware of the actions. So nothing particular to pull out unless you have any questions at all.
Is the version number need updated as well? Version number bottom.
Does the date need changing, or is that?
It's the version number is correct on the first section. It's only when it goes to the second section that you need to update. But yes, I'll do that.
See where it says May 21?
Yeah, that needs updated.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any comments that anyone has on this? Councillor Evans?
Yeah, I mean, I've read through this, and I think for me, it is probably as robust as Sheridan's ever going to get it. I think it's fair to say, I mean, if you look at the updating of the IT equipment and things, migrating to cloud service and things, again, that is something everyone's doing, and it makes sense to do that. And I think, yes, I mean, you could probably say, I mean, we've learned from experience of a few things here. So, yeah, I think it's a robust, solid job. It will do what we need it to do.
One of the things that's been talked about for as long as I can remember is the on page 55, item 5, which is the corporate plan. I know this is the sort of thing that we might have been bringing to this committee, but for the events of the last couple of years. So that's something that perhaps we can go and talk about between councils and officers on whether and how we do want to take that one forward. It does say one of the actions is to formulate a corporate plan.
It's a good job we didn't do one 2 years ago. That would have been toffee.
Well, yes.
A waste of a lot of time.
Well, they ought to be robust.
Mine was at work, so.
I mean, I think what it says in there's a new council term, and a new council is formed in a year's time after the election. It may be that we want to defer until the new council is elected. It will take probably about a year to do anyway.
Makes sense. Wait till the new council is elected.
Okay, so we have a proposal and second that we adopt this. All those in favour of that? And, thank you to Sheridan and Ben, I'm sure other officers for producing it. It's a good report. It's a good one.
Just pick up a point under expenses. Just that I was in Reading earlier, and Petra is 179.9 there, and it's 197.9 along Reading Road. So people want to save money. I think it's a good place to go is to the capital and get it for 179.
You can post on your Facebook
Depends
page.
yes, it depends how much petrol you use driving.
Well, I just think of all the vehicles that the council's got. That was all.
Do you not walk?
If you walk.
You only walk half a mile through the downhill.
If you walk.
Did you drive here tonight again?
He was going to get petrol, that's why he was driving.
But rather than drive up there to build it.
Your paper copies and walking to get here, that would save a lot.
I just thought I'd mention. Okay.
Just checking.
Perhaps the council should buy an electric bike.
Okay, item number 12, exclusion of public and press. To consider the public and press be excluded from the remainder of the meeting in accordance with the Public Bodies Admission to Meetings Act 1960.